Hi, my name is Frieda and welcome to my kitchen. Growing up, we had Sunday dinners together as a family and we would always have either a roast beef or we would have fried chicken. Now my mother made her roast beef in an electric frying pan, and when she did this, it created a very rich gravy. Although her roast beef was really good, it was inconsistent in the results. Have you tried making roast beef in your pressure cooker and wondered why it was great tasting one time and chewy and leathery and tough the next time? Well, today I'm going to show you some tips and some secrets to help you make a fantastic roast beef in your pressure cooker each and every single time. The first tip to cooking a successful tender roast is choosing the right kind of meat. I like to use a chuck roast that's between 2.5 to 3 pounds. Another tip is to consider the cooking times. When I first started cooking a roast in my pressure cooker, I had inconsistent results. I would weigh the roast, I would check the time, I would cook it for 40 minutes, I would cook it for 90 minutes. Sometimes you might see 100 minutes, thinking it's based on weight. Well, I found out that cooking your meat in a pressure cooker is not necessarily based on weight. It's determined by the thickness of the cut of your. First, you will want to pat your chuck roast dry. This will allow your meat to have a really good sear and crust that will help build flavor. After patting your roast dry, you will want to look for any connective tissue. This is anything that is in between your roast here that takes a long time to break down. What you'll want to do is look for the grain on your roast right here. The grain is running this direction. You want to cut your roast against the grain into about 1-inch strips. Okay, the next thing you want to do is to salt and pepper or season your roast very well. I like to use Seasonings because it has the spices that I like and the spices that remind me of my mom's roast beef. Okay, I want to turn my pot on to saute to brown my chuck roast. So I push that button once and the adjust button once, and that gives me a more setting. And then I want to put a tablespoon of oil in here and heat that up. To turn on the saute feature, I push the saute button once and then the adjust button once. It will say more. Then it will turn on and heat up your pot. When it says hot, that will be the time to put your meat in. My oil is hot and shimmery and it's time to brown my meat. You will want to brown it in batches. And not overcrowd the pan. Give it about 30 seconds to brown before you start moving it around. You want to brown all the sides of your meat and get it nice dark color. I am down to the last couple of pieces of my meat here, and it's taken about 15 minutes to cook this batch of about 2.5 pounds of chuck roast. This is a step that you do not want to skip. It adds a lot of flavor to your meat. Okay, I have finished browning all of my chuck roast and I have turned the saute feature off because the next thing I want to do is add some beef broth. This is 1 3/4 cup of beef broth and 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce. I'm going to mix it together and then pour it into it a little bit at a time. This is called deglazing. Deglazing is simply adding water to the crusty bits and letting it cook. You want to scrape the bottom of all those crusty bits. You want to scrape the bottom of all those crusty bits because if you keep those crusty bits on there, your pressure cooker will not come up to pressure. I find it easier to use something that has a flat edge, such as this wooden spatula or this metal one, to scrape all the bits. Okay, now that I've got all my crusty bits off, it's time to add the browned meat back into the pot, all along with the juices. Try to put it in a single layer in your cooker. Then I like to add some thickly sliced onions. Just put that on top. This is one medium onion sliced into about 3 thick pieces. Then my mom always said to have a good chuck roast, you need 2 bay leaves. Okay, next you want to put your lid on, lock it, make sure the valve is on the sealing position. To cook this pot roast, you will want to cook it for 30 minutes. Pushing the manual button once automatically defaults to 30 minutes. When the time is done, you will want to let it rest or naturally release for 15 minutes. Okay, it looks like our chuck roast has been naturally releasing for about 14 minutes. And when it hits 15, I will push the keep warm cancel button and open up the pot, and you can take a look and see what it looks like. I'm going to release the rest of the steam here. You might want to use a pair of tongs or a wooden spoon. Steam is getting a little bit quieter, and any minute now this float valve will drop. That will let you know that it's safe to open up the pressure cooker. There we go. And there's our beautiful pot roast. You'll want to remove the bay leaves, set them aside. Okay, we're going to transfer all this meat onto a plate. After putting our meat on a plate, want to cover it with foil and keep it warm until we have our vegetables done. Now, some of you might like to have carrots, onions, and potatoes cooked along with your roast. That might be fine if you're using a traditional method of a slow cooker or an oven. However, in the pressure cooker, vegetables take a different time than your roast does. I like to cook my chuck roast in here alone with the broth and the seasonings, and when it is finished, take the roast out and then put my vegetables in. One thing to remember is when you're doing back-to-back cooking, as I'm describing here, first cooking the roast and then cooking your vegetables, is that this silicone ring here gets hot and gets stretched. And if you try to put your vegetables in after the roast and put the lid on, it will not seal correctly. There's heat and steam and pressure pushing that lid up. And what you want to do is take this lid and just stick it into your refrigerator for a couple of minutes while you're getting those vegetables ready to put inside your pot. Then it'll be easier to close the lid and you will get a successful seal. I've got all my meat out and I put my drained potatoes in a strainer basket. And then I will want to use some baby carrots. Here are some baby carrots. To cook my vegetables, I am going to set the pressure cooker on manual for 5 minutes. That is all you need for the size of potatoes and the size of carrots that I have in this recipe. Okay, you can see how tender this piece of meat is here. Just picks it up, I can almost flake it off. Not dry at all, and it's perfect. Okay, the 5 minutes are up, and it means our vegetables are ready for a quick release. So using my tongs, when the full valve goes down, you know it's safe to open up your pressure cooker. The steam only takes about a minute and a minute and a half to release. Okay, you know that your vegetables are done when they're fork tender. Fork easily goes through your vegetables. And it's so easy to use this strainer to lift everything right out of the pot. I like to use these oven mitts. Really help. Drain off all that liquid. Okay, to make our gravy, the first thing I want to do is take the pot out and pour it into this gravy separator. This will catch any of the onions, and I'll let it sit. And it'll help separate the fat. The fat will rise to the top and will allow me to get the good broth on the bottom. While that's setting, while that's separating, I'm going to take 3 tablespoons of flour and 3 tablespoons of butter, equal parts, and mash it together. This will be the basis for our roux or the gravy. You want to mash the butter and the flour completely so you don't see any bits of flour remaining. It would be kind of like a thick paste. That looks good. Okay, then we want to turn our pot on to saute, adjust, saute, adjust to more, and stir it in completely. And quickly. I want to get every little bit out. Make sure there are no lumps. And you want to continually stir this until it becomes thickened. You can see the gravy is a rolling boil. At this point, the gravy will start to thicken. Just keep stirring so it doesn't burn on the bottom of your pan until you get to the consistency that you like. I think the butter adds a real rich flavor to this gravy. Okay, I've turned my pressure cooker off, and the next thing I want to do is strain it just to make it extra velvety and smooth. So I'll put it over the strainer in a bowl. There you have it. Everything you need to know to make the perfect Sunday pot roast for your family. I hope you take these tips and techniques and adapt them for your own family favorite recipe to make this roast. First, cutting out the connective tissue, then cutting your roast against the grain into 1 or 2 inch strips, browning those pieces of roast for the most flavor you can get out of it, and then cooking your vegetables separately so they're not mushy and they taste great. Thanks, Mom, for teaching me how to make a great pot roast. I've just learned how to make it better in less time in my pressure cooker. Hi, my name is Frieda, and welcome to my kitchen. Growing up, we had Sunday dinners as a family, and we would have one of 2 things.